In this chapter, we'll define a class to represent rational numbers or fractions. We call the class rational. And then we'll overload arithmetic operators such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division for this particular class. I've already started defining the class. The class has two constructors, a default constructor and a constructor with parameters, two functions, get numerator and get denominator, and a toString function that basically prints the rational number. Private data members, I have numerator, of course, and denominator, both of them integers, and also a function GCD that finds the greatest common divisor of two numbers, two of its parameters. I have the implementation file right here. Let's start by going over the GCD function, greatest common divisor. It receives two integer parameters and finds the greatest common divisor, which is the largest integer that evenly divides both parameters. So in this case, greatest common divisor of 12 and 8 would be 4. The rational class uses the greatest common divisor to simplify the rational number. For example, in this particular case, something like 8 over 12, that rational number, it will be reduced since the greatest common divisor is 4. It will be reduced to 2/3. The numerator is divided by the greatest common divisor 4, and denominator is also divided by the greatest common divisor. So 8 divided by 4 will give you 2, and 12 divided by 4 will give you 3. So the rational number always stores the fraction in its reduced form. So that's GCD. Get numerator and get denominator, they are obvious what they do. They return the values of the numerator and the denominator. And then we have two constructors, a default constructor that sets the numerator to 0, denominator to 1. So basically this is equivalent to 0 fraction. 0 over 1 is 0. And then we have this other constructor that receives two parameters, one for numerator and one for denominator. Now, it's important to understand what this other constructor does. It basically reduces the fraction to its lowest term using the greatest common divisor, and also reformats the fraction such that if it is a negative fraction, it attaches the negative sign to the numerator. So for example, let's say the rational number is 4 over negative 12. Basically the numerator is 4 and denominator is negative 12. What this constructor does, first it finds the greatest common divisor and assigns it to factor. The greatest common divisor of 4 and 12 is 4. And then what it does, it basically updates the numerator. Numerator will be, if the denominator is positive, it will throw a factor of 1 next to the numerator. If the denominator is negative, such as our case, in this case, negative 12, it throws a factor of negative 1 next to the numerator. So in our case, it will be negative 1 times the numerator, which will be negative 4, divided by the factor. This will be negative 4 divided by 4, which is negative 1. And then updates the value of the denominator as well, which will take the absolute value of the denominator, in this case absolute value of negative 12, which is 12, and then divides it by the greatest common divisor, which is 4. So 12 divided by 4 is equal to 3. So our fraction entered as 4 over negative 12 is basically reduced to negative 1/3. So the fractions in this class are reduced, and also if the fraction is negative, the negative sign is attached to the numerator. These are the things to keep in mind. And then you have the toString function, basically prints the fraction. So here is going to the source. Here's a simple program to test it. I've created three rational numbers. 2/3 -8/22, or -8 is the numerator, 22 is the denominator, and also R3, 8 as the numerator and -22 as the denominator, and I'm printing all of them. So let's take a look at this and see the output. Here is the output. So 2/3 is left as 2/3. -8/22 is reduced to -4/11. But notice R3, which was 8/-22, is reduced to 4/11, and also the negative is moved and attached to the numerator.